Well, let's talk about how Angular works with forms. As I mentioned earlier, forms is not supported by Angular out of the box. Angular is a fairly big set of libraries. If you want to work with forms, you need to explicitly import them and register them in the app modules. Right? So in the app modules, if we go to app modules here, we can import forms. You can say import forms module. There it is. It found it. And it's using the wrong quotes. And once we import it, we need to declare it in the imports. There it is. Now it's available across the entire framework. Right? Anywhere anywhere from the application, you can now refer to the library of the forms module. Okay. All right. Excellent. So from within the HTML of the course list, what we'd like to be able to do is that this button here for adding the courses, probably would like to enhance that with maybe an input field, right, so that we can type the name of the course that we want to add. That'd be great. So we can say here's an input field. Right, and so that would render right next to the add course. Maybe we'll just say add. There it is, add. What we'd like to be able to do here is bind whatever I type in that input field, bind it to some variable, so that when I click on add, I can then know what the title is, grab the title from this input field, and perhaps call the add course with the title that you typed in that input field, something like that. So to do that, the only place where we can declare variables is here, right, in the module, in the course list module. Right, we can declare all these variables. But you can actually also declare them right here in the input field. Right here in the HTML, you can declare also local variables, just like we did with this course. This course is a local variable, which our component knows nothing about. Right? It only has the scope of this for loop. Right? It's not available on the component. Similarly, we can declare local variables in this input field. We can say ngModel, right, and declare a new variable. They can say this is the title. So right there, we've declared a local variable. Okay. Now that local variable is not just that. We need to be able to bind it to the context of this component. And if you'll notice, we've been using these funny-looking characters, right? Parentheses and asterisk, and now I'll introduce yet another one, the square brackets, right? So these square brackets and parentheses and asterisks, right, allow us to bind these events, bind them to either travel from the template, travel to the component, or from the component, travel down to the template. Right? It allows us to go on either direction. Right? And you can choose to go only one way, or choose it to go the other way, or both ways. Right? So for instance, the ngModel, we can bind it so that this variable that is declared here, I can make it available over there in the component. Right? Just like the component can declare variables, and they magically appear here. Right? I have access to them over here. Right? These variables already have what are called two-way binding. Now, this variable that I declared here, courses, is bound so that I can read it from here. Right? So the data is flowing from my component to the HTML. But I can also make variables flow from my HTML back to the component. Meaning, whatever happens to this title here locally, I can make my component know about it, right? And vice versa. Right? So that we can both manipulate some data you want to flow one way, some data you want to flow the other way, and some data you want it to go both ways. And you can control that. You control that. For instance, the click, it makes no sense that the click travels from the component to here. And what the parentheses is saying is that this data only travels from the HTML to the component. Right? So it's one-way traveling from the HTML to the component. The square brackets would be the reverse. It says that this data flows from the component down to here, meaning that this title I just declared presumably is a variable that I'm reading from over there, right? And I'm binding it to this input field. Right? So if I declare a variable title, it would show whatever value I show there, it would display here. And I can do both. I can say that this variable can travel both ways. It can also go the other way around. Whatever I do to this title variable, I will be able to see it over there on the component. Right, so I can use a combination of both square brackets and parentheses to declare a variable that is both ways readable from either side, from the HTML or from the component side. Anyway, this, when you use both like this, we say it's two-way binding. Right? It's bound two ways. I can declare the title on that side and send you data, or I can type data here and I can see it on the controller. Right? All right, so for instance here in the add course, let's remove this here. Let's remove that there. Okay, and let's declare a variable called title here. And initially, it'll be empty. Right? Now, in my add course, instead of using this title, okay, I'm going to use this title over here. Right? It'll be this.title, meaning it's this instance over here. Right? Now, who sets the value of title? Only the input field. Only the input field. And how does he know about it? Well, because presumably, this parentheses is allowing me to write to that variable over there. Right? It's flowing, the data is flowing from this input field into the component. So let's see. All right, let's play around with that idea. Oops. And I can say ASD add. Notice that indeed, it is taking the title of that variable. And that data came only from this input field, and it wrote to that title variable in the component. It could have flowed the other way around too. It could have started with a default title. And notice that it has a default title. See? Now this is because the component set the value, and it flowed into the HTML. So it's doubly bounded, right? So you can have access to the variable on both ends of the HTML or the component, right? I can type this again. It says some other title, right? And it's being added right there. Make sense? Everybody okay? All right. Now, typically we would avoid. Now, notice that this style of programming is considered bad practice, right? Because here, this title over here is kind of like a global variable, right? And this function is really relying on some side effect of title being modified somewhere outside of the function, right? And then I'm seeing it because of some side effect, right? Typically, we would want to instead use a little bit more object-oriented way of communicating between these two. So a better practice might be to instead pass the title as an argument to the function, so that the title that comes in here is only available through an argument, a parameter. Even though title here might be changing, right? This improves the concern of this function. This function is not concerned with any side effects or any variables that lived outside only through a very well-defined API. Yes? Right? It's very, the dependencies between these two sides, right, is very well determined by this API, right? The data comes in and out only through this function. Make sense? All right. So yeah, so this would work the same way, right? So, everybody okay? Right. And perhaps this would be a good place to clear that. I could say, this dot title empty, so that when I add it, it clears it out, right? So because I modified that variable, and any variable that changes, it changes the state of the object. Everything gets re-rendered. Well, not everything. There's also some optimization here as well. Right? It knows that only that part of that variable changed, and so it only has to update that DOM element. It doesn't actually render the entire DOM tree. Okay? Everybody okay? All right. Let's see if I forgot something. Right, ngModel, right, that allows you to do a two-way binding between the input field, the ngModel variable, and the TypeScript variable. We have add course, and we created a brand new course, and we added it, and then we cleared the title. Everybody good? All right, awesome. Let's take a short break, and we'll come back right after this.